Alright, some of you guys were asking for a build thread, so I need to put my spare motor together anyway. So here you go. You got 1.6 skunk 2 rod, standard length, 137 millimeters on Vitara, their YCP 75.5 millimeter. See, it's 0.5 over. I've already gapped all the rings and everything. The rings are gapped 19 on the top ring, 21 on the second ring. So these are ready for me to drop in. I just need to oil down the cylinders and slide them in. This is a D15B block. With these rods I do have to notch the girdle. I don't have to notch the bottom of the cylinders on the 1.5, but I do have to notch the girdle, which you can see I've already done. Just wanted to make this a quick video, so I don't want to waste a bunch of time. It's stock sleeves, just has a block guard in it. Other than that, that's all that's in the bottom end. Very simple. I'm just going to oil down these cylinders real quick and then slide these pistons in. Also, I use a ring compressor. One size just helps. Everything just slides right together. Very simple. You know, trying to use the adjustable ones. You know, multi-size. It's great. It's fine if you like using them. This just works really well. And since I do this same setup all the time, I just bought one. It makes it simple for the $30 it costs. It's well worth it. Also with Vitara Pistons, they are directional, just like any piston really. But these are from a Vitara, Suzuki Grand Vitara motor, so they're actually backwards on that motor. The intake valves are on the front of the motor, where on this motor they're on the back of the motor. So you need to make sure that you put those the right way. There's an arrow. Normally that would go towards the front where the crank pulley would be, but in this case it's going to go towards the back where the flywheel will be, because they're upside down. And if you look at the piston, you can tell that this valve notch is bigger than the exhaust. So the intake valves are bigger than the exhaust. So you want to have those on the back of the motor. Pop all these in here real quick, and then we'll go to the other side and torque it all down, drop the crank in. This is a Wiseco spring compressor, and you can see how easy it makes this process, which is why I use it. over and drop the crank in. I am using ACL aluminum silicone main bearings because this is a D15 main bearing and there's not any race bearing option for these. So these are the bearings that I'm going with. They're working fine in my other block, so use these here as well. Also, for assembly lube, I use a Lucas product. Let me grab it. Alright, sorry, I had to grab some tools out of the car. I had to go work on a friend's car that I built for him, so I had some tools in there. I had to go over to his house. So this is the what I use for assembly lube. It's a Lucas Heavy Duty Oil Stabilizer. It's a good assembly lube. It even actually says on the back, a premium assembly lube. But it's very thick, kind of like honey. So it's good, it's sticky, doesn't just run all over the place. And it's nice for putting bearings and sticking your thrust washers to the side. Really holds the thrust washers in place really well when you put those on. So. Again, ACL thrust washers, just standard thrust washers, and then I am using ACL race bearings for the rod bearings. Since they are D16 rods, I can use the D16 rod bearings, so I can't do that with the mains because it's D15 journals and they don't make any race bearings. because this stuff is so sticky, I can just lay it on there and it will just hold itself in place until I drop the crank in. You can see how sticky it is, but it's all stringy. Here's my crank all cleaned up. Get some rod bearings in here. So you want it on the threads and the contact point of the bolt where it's going to meet the rod. That way you get nice lubrication there and you can get a good even torque. Touch these down so I can get the other ones on. And then we'll torque everything else up. Get them all lubed up good. Get them in there and we're going to torque these down. These get torqued to 46 foot-pounds. So I do it in 2 steps. I do 20 foot-pounds and I go back and do 46. So, again, tap them down. Just so they're mated. Grab a torque wrench. foot-pounds. No particular order, it doesn't matter. Alright, now they're set down, we'll go to 46. I like to just make sure everything still spins freely. Once I do that, just to, don't want to have any binding issues or anything like that. So, still spins nice and smooth. Good there. We're going to go ahead and throw the main bearings in the cradle here. Lube those up and bolt it on and torque it down. And I had already cleaned all this stuff up before I started. But make sure you do that if you're putting together a motor. Make sure all your oiling holes are clean and clear of debris. Sometimes when you get a crank back, if they didn't clean it out good, you need to spray out all those oil ports and the journals. Just make sure that stuff is clear of debris from if they cut it or polished it or whatever. Just make sure that stuff isn't packed full of shavings of some sort and gonna ruin your motor. Alright, the cradle can only go on one way. All my bearings are in, and I lubed up the journals there. My thrust washers are in. So, drop that on. Give it a little tap of room. And same thing, I'm just going to set these down, and then I'll go back and torque them. Actually, I need to lube these. So I will just use the assembly lube that I already have. Also, my car is apart right now, so I haven't made any new videos. I decided that I was going to do a thing. I needed to pull the other motor apart. So this motor is actually going to go in the car. I needed to pull the other one apart anyway because it has a wrist pin failure, and it's been knocking for quite a few weeks. It's been knocking since it's had the electrical issues. I had the electrical issues, replaced the harness and everything, and then I just replaced the harness actually, engine and chassis harness, and then went for a drive. Everything seemed fine. I made a little test hit, and it acted up, and came back and found out the distributor was, something was wrong with the distributor. The distributor is what was causing my electrical issues. So I replaced the distributor, and when I started it back up, after doing the distributor, it had a knock that just kind of like piston slap. As it warmed up, it would get quieter to the point where you couldn't hear it anymore. And it was like that for all of those passes that I made. All those 10-second passes. It was like that. I just didn't really care because I had a spare and was going to put it together either way, so I didn't really care. I just let it ride. So it got a little worse, as you'd expect, after getting beat on. So we are going to use this motor, and we'll use the parts out of that one that are good, and for another spare motor. But since I had to pull the motor apart, I also had a spare head, so I went ahead and gutted my head and sent my spare head and all my valve train to 4-Piston Racing to get a CNC port. So we'll see what happens with that. I should be getting that here. Next couple weeks I'll get that back, and I'm going to test it out and see what it does compared to my port. It's got to have, significant gains over my port. My port, all it was I cleaned up the casting and polished it. Basically all I did. So let me torque this up. I'll wash my hands off real fast. Alright, looks like we got a little storm rolling through. So I get this done because it's all wet. Alright, main cap bolts. 16, 18 foot-pounds, doesn't really matter. Is your first step. And then 38 after that. That was 18, now I'm going to do 38. Rain coming in now. tight. There's everything missing. Good, and then again, just to make sure everything spins freely. That's that. Other than that, I mean, it's just bolting on oil pump and main covers and putting the pan back on. Oil pickup, I mean, real simple. That's pretty basic, but that's the bottom end build, very simple. Like I said, just skunk to standard length 137mm rods, YCP 75.5mm pistons with Teflon coating, and then ring gaps. First ring's 19 thousandths, the second ring is 21. That's it. Pretty standard. I'm going to get the rest of it together, and whenever I get my head, I'll get it in and I'll give you guys an update. Alright, bottom ends all together. I wanted to show you the how this setup works out with the D15B crank and the D16 rods. So this is all the way up top dead center, and you can see the piston sticks out of the deck just a little bit. It's actually half a millimeter sticks out, or 20 thousandths sticks up over the deck. So because of that, I use a 0.5 millimeter or thousandths, 50 thousandths head gasket to make up for that little bit that sticks out. I just don't want the quench zone to be so tight, so I use a thicker head gasket, a 20 thousandths thicker head gasket. But there you go, that's that. The bottom's ends all together, oil pump and everything's back on, and so she turns over freely. So good stuff. This is all back together, and then I'm gonna put the rest of the pieces on, and then I'll swap this one into the car, and once the head gets here, we'll drop it on and be ready to go again. I'm sure we'll have to retune. I'm sure the fuel map will be off, but no big deal. Alright, thanks for watching.